All right, so let me just quickly comment on the video we just watched. So this video was talking about the crisis period, essentially around here, right? And the video essentially highlights this unemployment rate itself is not a sufficient statistics to understand the difficulty in labor market. Right? So they exclusively talk about the three things we just mentioned, right? Those discouraged worker, those marginally attached worker, and those involuntary part-time worker, right? So some students may feel this video is a little bit too emotional, and some may even complain this is like a typical democratic propaganda. So I wouldn't argue about that. So for me as the economist, I just want to emphasize two things. Number one, so whatever they report, maybe they exaggerated, maybe there are other reasons behind what they have experienced now, but clearly, so this report has some scientific background or scientific support, which is, so we need to look at not only unemployment rate itself, we need to look at other things as we talk about. This is number one. And then number two, from that video, so hopefully you can link that to what happened right now, okay? And particularly what happened, the government has been done, right? So say, for example, the government enact these CARES Acts, so they provide support to a lot of people who has been laid off or who has been furloughed, right? And furthermore, so you may pay attention to the lots of things this radio says. Oh, so in 2009, 2008, they say, oh, so the Congress won't pass another bill because of the deficit is already skyrocketed. It's already very, very high. And the funny thing or the ironic thing is, so now, so we are facing a similar situation, because right now, so the president and the Congress, they talk about whether to have another fiscal stimulus, whether to have another check to unemployed workers, whether to support the economy or not. Similar situation. And but now actually, so in terms of physical burden or the physical deficit, or in terms of the government's debt, so now we are in a much worse position than we were in 10 years ago. So maybe we can eradicate, sorry, maybe we can postpone those discussions later when we talk about government policy. For now, let's just focus on labor market to make sure we understand how to measure labor market, to understand what those numbers mean, also understand so the shortcoming of those numbers. Now let's look at these practice questions. Okay. So while you read these numbers, I can maybe just draw a picture so help you better understand so what this number means, right? Right, so I draw this big circle represent adult population, which is 200 million. And then, so among this big adult population, oh, sorry. Among this adult population, right? So we have people in labor force, that's including this part, that's 150. And then, so inside labor force, we have some employed that is given by here. Right? So it's 138. And lastly, we have discouraged worker. So who are they? So actually they are here. They are not in labor force. And that's discouraged worker. Now the question asks, what is unemployment rate? So we need first find out the unemployment, the number of unemployed, which is 150 minus, so this is unemployed. Unemployment rate divided by 150. Right? So secondly, what is the labor force participation? So that's 150. That's the labor force divided by adults population, which is 200. Oh, so I already have the answer here. Okay, so this is this one. Now let's look at other one. Who is counted as unemployed? Okay, let's go one by one. A, Darren is a 10 years old. It's not. It's actually it's not considered as a labor force, right? Because no, so it's not in adults population. Okay, it's not in adult population. So of course it's not in labor force, and for sure it's not unemployed. B is a stay-at-home mom. Yeah, I assume it's adult population. But however, so she is not active looking for job. She's not in labor force, so it's not unemployed. Now C is a full-time college students, meaning so these students has no intention to looking for job or not working. So again, not in labor force. Now, next one, Carl, who works part-time, but would prefer more hours. Actually, so Carl, so he has a job, he's employed. Right? He's not unemployed. Okay? But he just involuntarily part-time worker, right? But definitely not unemployed. So the answer is E. Okay? None of the answers is correct. Right. So now we can summarize the pros and the cons of this unemployment rate. Right. So we have studied how to reach the number or how we get a measure of unemployment rate. Right. So the unemployment rate actually gives us a good indication of the health of the labor market. So typically, higher the unemployment rate, the more difficult to find a job. Lower the unemployment rate, easier to find a job. All right. But this is not a perfect for several reasons, right? So we have seen some explanation earlier. It can overstate, it can understate. Right? But furthermore, it doesn't measure the quality of jobs. So that's actually probably just refers to, at least refers to involuntarily part-time. Right? So that's an indication it's not a high quality job you would like. And also, it doesn't tell us how well people are matched to their job. I have a job, I'm a professor, you know. So you may think, oh, so I like my job. But this doesn't tell us, okay, so how well I'm matched to my job. So maybe my qualification is too high for you know, or I may want to have a better job, right? But this number, my situation never happens in this unemployment rate, right? For this reason, economists look at other indicators to supplement unemployment rate so that we have a better picture regarding to the health of the labor market. Okay? So they look at least three things. Number one, look at labor force participation. Okay? So they just to capture those discouraged workers. How to understand that? let's just draw this graph again. So you have employed, you have unemployed, you have not in labor force. Now, if you have lots of people, just think about extreme case, right? Think about extreme case. So if all of people here, they feel discouraged, and then they decide to quit, they think enough is enough. Now suddenly the unemployment rate goes to what? Goes to 0. Then that means the labor market is super strong? The answer is definitely no, right? The unemployment rate plummet to 0. It's not because the labor market is strong. On the contrary, it's just because the labor market is so terrible, you lost lots of workers. They just feel discouraged, right? So that's why. So yeah, by the way, so if we look at the labor force participation rate, you're gonna see, so this labor force participation rate declines significantly in this particular case, in this hypothetical case, right? Now we also look at number of full-time job. Why is that? It's because if we look at employee, right? So it could be the case, people here, they are involuntarily a part-time employee. So they want to have a full-time, but they just cannot find a full-time, right? The unemployment rate doesn't tell us their story. Okay, so we need to look at the number of full-times, but a certain data says, okay, so you also look at number of part-times to have a better picture. Now, lastly, so we also need to look at average wage, right? So that will tell us the quality of jobs and how well people are matched to their job, right? So this just tells us, I mean, essentially, wage is just reflection of the quality of job. Typically, higher the wage, the better or higher quality of job, right? Okay, but again, so this is something unemployment rate itself cannot tell you, right? So keep this in mind. So we need to look at 3 things to supplement the single measure we have discussed, which is unemployment rate, right? But you need to understand, so why we want to supplement the unemployment rate with these 3 things. What's the reason behind that? How we understand those numbers, right? Now, so just further expand the point, why unemployment rate itself may not be a enough number, enough statistic. So you may want to look at unemployment rate by age. Also here, so this is yeah. So here we look at age, and we also look at race, right? So let's just start from the far left. So we look at 3 years. So to 2010, that's essentially in the deep of the recession, right? So 27, the unemployment rate, the overall unemployment rate in the U.S. market is 5%. And in 2010, so we reach the peak and then start to decline in 2014. Right? Okay, so this is overall. But this overall doesn't tell us how certain group they were doing. So if we dig into the data, you're gonna see very interesting pictures. Now, if we look at African American, overall, they preserve this shape, like hump shape, right? So it's increasing and decreasing, reflecting the recovery. But the level is much higher, right? And furthermore, you may want to look at how the recession hurts them how the recovery is benefit them compared to the general population. Okay, not in the same level. Now, if we look at a age group, a particular age group, we look at teenagers. Okay? We also differentiate between white teenagers versus African American teenagers. Okay, so this shape preserved, right? But the level is getting higher and higher, right? And then some students may wondering, so why we care about teenagers? So you may understand, okay, so why we care about different race. Okay? Because eventually, if we have a good policy to address our social issue, so we need to be specific. We need to target it. Right? In a sense, we know from here, if we compare this one versus this one, we understood in general, certain racial group in our economy, they suffer more than others. So if we want to improve the well-being of the society, we may want to have a targeted policy. So we understand that. But you may be wondering, okay, so why we care about teens? Why we care about teenagers' unemployment rate? So the reason behind this is because teenagers, they work, they accumulate quite a lot of skills. Think about social skills. Okay? Think about how they're dealing with their workers or how they deal with stress. So that's going to have lifetime impact on their labor market performance. That's why economists keep track of the teenagers' unemployment rate. Right. Okay. So I'm going to stop here for today. So next class, which is going to be Monday, so we will continue our discussion. We are going to study this unemployment. Right. So just keep in mind. So we have a couple of things. Number one, as I mentioned in an earlier email, so I offer you extra bonus points opportunity. Okay, so how you can earn, you just log into the Zoom link I sent to you and then participate on Friday's events. Actually, this Friday, we have a great speaker. So from University of Utah, he's going to talk about racial and gender inequality during COVID-19. Okay? What you need to do, log into this event, listen to his talk, and make notes. And then, so toward the end of the semester, so I'm going to create a special pop quiz. So you just open your notes, answer those questions. So you get bonus point. This is number one. And then number two, just make sure you do all your homework. And we are going to have our midterm two in like roughly like 2 weeks time. Right? Just make sure you log into Zoom to take the exam. Right? So I'm going to remind you so before the exam. All right. Thank you so much for your time and for your patience. So we will see each other next week and have a great weekend. Thank you.